Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So, today I'm going to be going over a few things that you should know about comic books so that if you're interested into getting into the hobby, hopefully this will give you kind of a direction of where to start. So, I'm going to be pretty brief here because there's a lot I could say, but YouTube doesn't like me uploading videos longer than 15 minutes. And I really want to try to get this done in one video. There's a possibility there'll be like a part two, but I'm really going to try to get this done in one video. So, first thing you should know about comics. There are two big names in the comic book industry, DC Comics and Marvel Comics. Oh, and by the way, these are the four comics that I will be reviewing next. I only ended up with one DC comic because that's, well, I guess they requested people, my listeners on Anchor, requested Batman twice, and I still want to get a Batman issue because this is Detective Comics. I want to actually get Batman, probably issue 40 or somewhere around there, but we'll see about that. Anyway, for now, these are the ones that I have. So, that's why these comics are here. So yeah, DC, they are home to characters like Superman, Batman, The Flash, Green Arrow. Think Justice League. You know, all those characters and all the villains associated with them. Though that's DC Comics. Marvel Comics, I think, are a little bit more well known these days, which is kind of funny because it used to be like the only thing people knew about was DC. But with the new Marvel movies, I think a lot of people now know more about the Marvel universe. So, Marvel is home to characters like Captain America, Spider-Man, Black Panther. So think Avengers and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that's Marvel Comics. DC Comics came first. Their first big character was Superman, which debuted in Action Comics #1 in 1938. Marvel Comics has a bit more complicated history. Their first big hero was Captain America, which came around in World War II, and he was created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. But later, the comic book company actually used to be a different name than Marvel, but they became Marvel Comics. Stan Lee started working for them, and he created Spider-Man with Steve Ditko, and then he created like Fantastic Four and the rest of the Marvel Universe with Jack Kirby. So they created, the Avengers and everything like that. So that's just a brief history of the comics for you. Another thing about comic books is they like to do reboots, especially Marvel. So what a reboot is basically the company will go, okay, they'll stop all the current series, all the current issues. They'll end them, and then they will reboot. And a lot of times, they'll start with number ones, start back at number one, and they'll go from there. So, DC has had two bigger ones within the last 10 years. Their first one was DC The New 52, and that one was really trying to get new readers hooked on comics, trying to get them involved, because you look at this number 974 and you're like, gosh, do I need to read the past 973 issues? Well, first off, no, you don't. A lot of comics, you can pretty much pick up what's going on even if you haven't read a single issue from the series before. So that's kind of a good thing to know. But yeah, the New 52 lasted for about 5 years until 2016, when DC rebooted again, this time with DC Universe Rebirth. And let's see, I actually have this is Action Comics 992, and you can see they have this nice banner for it. They've started going with this more classic title covering, which I really like, but this is still from the DC Universe Rebirth reboot. And so basically, when they started the New 52, they changed a lot of the characters. They got rid of a lot of stories that the older, more dedicated comic book fans really liked. And so, the fans that were following the characters for a really long time felt kind of cheated. And so DC, they're like, okay, we hear you. We're going to relaunch. And this time, they did it so that both old and new readers could enjoy the comics. So DC is actually doing really good right now, which I'm really happy about. So basically, like you see this right here, Night's Fall, they'll do like kind of a mini series. A mini series that'll last for 4 or 5, sometimes 6 issues, and then they'll move on to another story. So they're coming up with new stories, but the past ones, they still matter. They're still a part of the universe, and but you don't have to know all those stories to be able to hop into a new story and understand what's happening. So I really like that structure. It works really well. And here in just a second, I'll show you another example of that. And by the way, I don't know if you guys caught that cut, but I thought that was pretty sly. Anyway, Marvel Comics, they like to do reboots a lot. They've done several, like too many that I can't remember all of them. And part of that is I just don't follow Marvel Comics like I do with DC. But basically, the one that I really remember was All New, All Different Marvel, and that one was really focusing on diversifying Marvel Comics. So they came out with a lot of new characters that were a race other than white, had an orientation other than straight, and a religion other than Judeo-Christianity. And so they did that because they thought there was an audience there. They thought, because there are SJWs that pretend to be into comic books, but they're really not. And when it comes time, to show up and buy the comics, they don't. The comics didn't sell, and so for the past 5 years, Marvel Comics have been kind of hurting in sales. They do seem to be kind of coming out of that and realizing that the actual audience are, more conservative people who like the old characters, and we're fine with diverse characters, and some of them actually make comics better. Definitely, I totally agree with that. But when you're only focusing on the character because of their skin color or their religion or their orientation, sexual orientation, like it becomes a very boring story. And so the latest Marvel reboot, and it wasn't like a huge reboot really, like it was a reboot, but it's not like all of the, well, I guess they did, because they took back Captain America to the original numbering. So I guess they are kind of doing a reboot, but there's another one coming in May, so don't get too attached to Marvel Legacy. Anyway, they're trying to take the characters back to their roots and make them more of the classic heroes that everybody likes. So that's really nice. Oh, also, you might have noticed the Star Wars thing. As some people may know, Disney owns both Marvel and Star Wars. So originally, like back in the 80s, Star Wars was published by Marvel Comics. Sorry, I'm trying to get through this thing. Then Star Wars started being published by Dark Horse, and now that Disney bought Star Wars and Marvel, Marvel is back to publishing Star Wars. So now you know about that. Sorry again, guys. This video is kind of rushed because I really want to get this done in one video, so I can start on the reviews. But anyway, let's see, what else do you need to know? Oh yes, comics these days are a little pricey. $3 for kind of a thin 30-page issue. I guess it's not terrible. Marvel Comics is $4. I don't know why Marvel thinks they're uh, worth more than DC. I'm a huge DC fan. If you haven't noticed, I know a lot more about this universe. I like the characters better, and I enjoy reading DC comic books more. Now that being said, I totally get why people like Marvel. I like Marvel. I really like the movies, but if I had the option of buying DC or Marvel, Captain America versus Batman, I'm gonna buy Batman most days. If it's a good story, I'll pick Captain America. But yeah, Superman or Batman, yeah, I'm a big fan of those guys. So, if you are looking to get into comics, just know that if you, um, want to get every issue, it's gonna cost a little money. The way I kind of reconcile it, because it is a little painful spending $3 on this thing, especially when the story isn't really that good, and you feel kind of like you just blew $3 on something that's not very good. Um, okay, so basically, like a movie, right, is generally $6 to $8. So a comic book is about half that price, and like a movie, you go in, you watch it for 2 hours, you walk out of the theater, and you just, if it was a bad movie, you just blew $6 plus whatever else you spent on, popcorn, drinks, snacks, whatever. Um, you just blew it, and you'll never really get it back, because you're not ever going to think about that terrible movie again. Where like with a comic book, if it's good, you can go back and see it over and over again. And I mean, okay, yes, you can do that with a movie too, but comics are just a lot longer lasting. And personally, I like them because they are very American. Superheroes are American icons. Comic books are indigenous to America, which I think is awesome. So that's kind of how I think, that's how I bring myself to spend $3 on this comic book. Also, the stories are really good. Comic stories, basically anything can happen. Where like, with a movie, it's basically just one story and that's that. Same with a TV show. Not as much can happen as what can happen in a comic book. And I mean, literally anything can happen in a comic. Anything. So that's another thing. There's a lot more freedom for stories, for really cool stories in comic books. Let's see. The next thing you should know is the different kinds of ways that comics are published. So the first way is the single issue. This is a single issue. They cost $3, and they come out either bi-weekly or monthly. I think Detective is bi-weekly, but some of the smaller titles like Teen Titans are monthly. And I think both come out with their new issues on Wednesdays. So that's a single issue. Then there are what's called trade paperbacks, and this is a trade paperback. So basically, they take a bunch of single issues in a row and put them all into one big book. So this is the Action Comics Oz Effect storyline, and it has 5 parts. Yeah, 5 parts plus an aftermath issue. And so, and actually it already is. And in one of the reviews, I'll point it out. DC took all of these single issues and put them all into one big issue. And actually, trade paperbacks are cheaper than the single issues. But yeah, so this one's actually really cool. It has the first Batman stories in it, so I'm a big fan of this one. And I am almost out of time, but I'm going to try to get through this real quick. So yeah, this is a trade paperback, so they basically take a bunch of single issues and put them in order into like one volume. The third kind of comic book, I guess, is a graphic novel. And this is basically just one big story that was never a single issue and was never intended to be published with single issues. So this is, it was written as a graphic novel. It was written all in order, and the story is the same. So That's going to do it, guys. I'll see you next time.